A consent agenda reveals more than just a dirty trick. There's a lot more at play about the decision to hire a city manager and city planner and fire the old one. I've got the Iron Lady, Adrienne Balkum, with me today. It's time for some straight talk, Rockwall County. I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen, and this is the Bunker Bob Show. Yes, good afternoon, and it is great to be with you, and I'm especially excited. Excited about today's guest. With me today is, of course, someone who is not a stranger to this show. That, of course, is the Iron Lady, the person I call the Iron Lady, Adrienne Balkum. Adrienne, it is great to have you on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me, Bob. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, we are going to talk. We've got a lot to talk about today. And before we go into the nitty-gritty of the details about the topic of today's show, I want to give our audience the opportunity to understand the background and what really drew a lot of our attention to this issue. So let me play this 2-minute clip, and so that citizens can kind of get caught up on what's really going on and what's really at play. Watch this.
Consent agenda for tonight. I'm looking for a motion to approve all the agenda items.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to approve all the agenda items in paragraph 6 of the consent agenda.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Show that unanimous. All right. Does anybody have questions over 8, which is building reports, sheriff's reports, budget report, fire report, or the trash report? Okay.
Yes, and that is the background of this issue, and hopefully the echo that we had at the beginning of the show is gone. Sometimes I have an extra camera that is picking up sound, and I try and catch it before the show. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. But that is the background of that, and let's see if it is okay. It's good. All right, very good. So. That's the background of what we're talking about, and ultimately, the first question that we should be asking is why the quality matters as it relates to the issue of quality, or excuse me, of the city engineer, city planner. And before I bring you back, Adrienne, let me highlight a couple of things. And the first is the scope of services, and feel free to jump in as we go as I go through this very quickly. When it comes to the city engineer, and I do want you to kind of speak to this, because when we talk about scope of services, Adrienne, kind of give us a sense of what's important about this and why the city engineer, the role of the city engineer is such an important one.
Hi again. Yeah, it is very important. In fact, it's so important that it's even in a statute in state law about how to find qualified candidates.
Yeah,
And it's not based on.
and we're focusing on because I want to focus on that especially because that's the big issue. But when it comes to the quality of a civil engineer, we're looking at the scope of services. Kind of give me a sense of. And I know the answer to this. We both know the answer to this. But you and Scott Turnbull spent an inordinate amount of time reviewing candidates. We'll look at that real quick in just a few minutes. But give me a sense. Why is the city engineer so important?
Well, we need to make sure that we have TCEQ compliance. There's infrastructure issues. There's drainage issues. You, as residents that live in any town, you would want to make sure that your foundations, all of the stuff that you're living in your home to be built to a certain code and standard. And I think that's probably one of your major investments is your home and where you're living. You want to be able to travel down roads and not have to worry about certain road issues and sewer, drainage, all that stuff is impacted if you don't have the appropriate engineering services.
So the city engineer is essentially important because they're making determinations on things that the city is going to be liable for, but also is. Like, for instance, the Sonoma Verde pit, the streets, the drainage, all of those things were important because the city takes ownership of all of that, correct? And if they don't do it right, well, then the city's going to end up paying for it.
Exactly, and you don't want to like chimp out on, and I say chimp out, it really should be cheaping out on just getting anybody. You need to do your due diligence in getting qualified candidates to make sure that you have the best group. And I don't think anybody would deny wanting to make sure that you have a qualified candidate that can be able to do the job, especially when you're dealing with, public safety and all these different avenues to make sure that your home is set up right and constructed right. And if there is any issues, you would want that engineer who has that contract with the city to basically report that as expected to.
Absolutely, and I think this is the one what you were going to talk about a minute ago. We kind of talked a little bit about what the city can do and cannot do, and we've got the Texas Municipal Procedure Law made easy to make that the city uses all the time. The Texas Municipal League is what the city is a member of, and what's interesting is that cities are prohibited from using competitive bidding procedure to obtain the services of architects, engineers, and the like, and which is surprising to a lot of people. Instead, for contracts involving architectural, engineering, or land survey services, a city must first select the most highly qualified provider and then attempt to negotiate a fair and reasonable price. And then the statute goes on to say the Professional Services Procurement Act does not specify the exact process by which a city may procure accounting, medical, all these things. The law merely prohibits obtaining these services through competitive bidding and requires that such services be selected on the basis of demonstrated competence and qualifications. So ultimately what the state has done, and the reason they created that this is an issue at all, is because years ago you had small cities especially that basically were just running to the cheapest fly-by-night engineer or city planner or whatever it is that they were looking for, and the taxpayers ended up footing the bill. What the state is saying is if a city is going to hire a city engineer, cost is not the most important factor. Qualification, experience, qualification, these are the key factors. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so when we go back and look at when we kind of drill into this, there's additional points that it makes very quickly. it talks about that the question is, can a general law city under 5,000 population, which is McLennan Chisholm, impose a lower threshold for requiring competitive bids? And the answer to that is stated, as noted earlier, the Professional Services Procurement Act prohibits a city from using competitive bidding procedures to secure the services of certain professionals such as architects, engineers, and certified public accountant. And I think that's a surprise to a lot of people, certainly. But I guess the question that I would have for you is, or what I'd like to do is first start out by talking about what you did and what Scott Turnbull, who was on the council back then, he was the mayor pro tem, what you guys did in 2019. And so I've got minutes from March 11th. Is that where you want to start?
Sure, if that's where you want to start. Yeah.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
Did you pull it up already? Yeah. So, we were going to start in 2018 because we were in the process of trying to find new candidates for certain positions with the city of McLennan Chisholm. And at the time, one of the, it just kind of changed course was when we had to change our city attorney, and he ended up having a job opportunity that he couldn't pass up. And so we had to move it to the beginning of January to this engineer and city planner. And so we had put it on the agenda that we were wanting to do an RFQ and all that. And so through that process, the city administrator ended up doing, the regular basis of putting it out in the newspaper and putting it out through TML and other locations that were looking for engineers and a city planner. And then we ended up getting about 8 total candidates for both the engineer and also for the city planner. And then you could see that on March 11th, 2019 in the minutes there.
Yeah, and the request for proposal is required by law, and the city received, as you said, eight companies submitted proposals.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we had in discussion was to make sure that, there was a discussion amongst the city council members and city administrator explained that this doesn't include price as part of the proposal. They will have to be negotiated, and it carries on that even the city attorney confirmed and explained that the engineers are solicited through RFQ process. They need to be ranked, and then a contract price can be negotiated. And then I asked for clarification, and if a firm is ranked number 1 and a price cannot be agreed upon, do you have to start all over? And the city attorney, Holla, responded yes. And then Mayor Short chimed in and recommended that we score the engineers. And the city administrator stated that they will need to have a criteria for scoring, and city attorney Holla reported yes, that is the best way to proceed.
What I find interesting is that even in the minutes, it's included that the law that we just talked about, that we just went over, is included in the minutes, highlighting the fact that this is the process that you have to go through. So it's that's Mayor Short, that's the current city administrator. They know exactly what the law is, and when they went through this process the first time. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
And then Mayor Pro Tem Turnbull, at the time, he asked Lisa, the city administrator, how soon can you have the scoring sheet prepared? And she immediately responded that she could have it ready by the next day. And so Mayor Short, he suggested that each council member rank the proposals, and the scoring sheet will be ready on the 15th, and with the results that need to be turned in by the 21st. And so that we can have the presentations, invitations to go out to the engineers or city planners and present on March 26th. So we ended up all of us turned in our scoring sheets pretty quickly, and they were invited. And then we had March 26th, and we had about four candidates for the engineer, 4 candidates for the city planner. They came and presented, and first they did their presentations, and then we ended up asking questions to each candidate afterwards. And it was a very good, thorough questioning because
But-
we
but-
had already kind of experienced. Oh,
But more than that, it wasn't just thorough. It was also very open and transparent. These are minutes. These minutes show which companies were considered. The March 11th minutes show which companies were considered and which had submitted. And there was no problem in doing it back then. Plus, a lot of this whole process. You're saying that the presentations were done. Were they done in executive session or an open session?
no, they were all done in open session. I mean, every one of us, like I have, like, I mean, to this day, you know, from whenever I was on council, I mean, I had stacks of material that I would read, and I would ask them questions about their experience, and because it would help me to determine why should he be the candidate that I would be voting for.
Sure.
And I would think that that's something that any council member would take in consideration, the information that's being provided to you, because you're dealing with a multi-million-dollar projects throughout the city. It could be from just in our situation in the city of McLennan-Chisholm, we had new projects coming in, like such as the fire station and any type of retail outlets or commercial outlets. I mean, I wanted to make sure that we had the best candidate that could be able to handle that, and also sewer. Infrastructure, roadways. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. I mean, I don't want to have anything on my shoulders or in my hands that I ended up was a part of failing the public because I wasn't participating in getting the best person for the job.
Yeah, and so we looked at the city engineer. Clearly, we saw the minutes and saw the process that played out. The city planner, very much the same thing. They had you guys had brought in or did an RFP just like before. You guys did. I'm guessing you did your same ranking system. Is that right?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
And so.
So they presented on the same night. It was a very long night, but I appreciated all of their presentations. They did every one of them, all of them, and I want to say, make sure that you understand that even Dub Dufresne and Mike Coker, who was both of those two individuals, they had the opportunity to present as well.
Now let me. What I'm showing right now is from the March 11th meeting, that city council meeting, where the proposals were basically presented to the city council, letting the council know that proposals had been submitted, that the city council had all of this in their hands, and basically a summary of each one of these individuals was included in the minutes. And then the following meeting, which was the March 26th meeting, y'all had culled down the top four, and again, like before, you had the opportunity to hear presentations.
That's right. Yeah, and this is in 2019, and like I said, we were trying to do the best that we could to find the best candidates for this position.
So before we go to 2020, this is last year. I think that's the thing that should confound any taxpayer that's listening to this right now and saying, okay, the first question you would have is, now they just kind of did this process again. You just saw the consent agenda. They just approved another city engineer and another city planner. The question I have for you, I have my opinion, but what do you think? Why do you think the current or the most recent city engineer and city planning firm, why do you think that the city council got rid of them?
I believe that the city administrator told them through executive session. Again, they can't reveal this comments or commentary that was mentioned in executive session, and this is in 2020. There was executive sessions, and I believe the city administrator told the city council that there was communication problems between the city engineer, city planner, the ones that we ended up hiring, which was master plan. Which
Now,
was
wait a
city
minute. Hold on just a second.
And
Before you go any further, what's interesting about this is you're speculating. I'm speculating. We're all speculating. Nothing was presented in an open forum before the citizens, so that we as citizens can know why the heck you didn't just get rid of a city engineer. You're saying that poor communication. Let me ask you, the city engineering firm and the city planning firm, are these the same company or are they separate companies?
they're separate companies.
Okay, so they're separate companies. And so what is it that both of them, separate companies, did at the same time that required the city council to basically dismiss them? And Adrienne, you're kind of speculating just exactly what I've been doing. We don't know what the problem is, and therein lies the problem. How is it that the city planner and the city engineer, if it's not a matter of competitive bidding, which we've already found out is against the law, you can't do competitive bidding. You've got to choose those the firm that is going to serve the citizens best. So ultimately, you don't know and I don't know, except for...
I am confident in knowing this.
Yeah.
I know the process that happened
Yep.
in 2019. The city administrator was very adamant that she did not want to change the city engineer and city planner. She didn't even want to go through any of this process because of so much change that was taking place. We have emails of that, of her explaining that through email and also vocalizing that.
Now wait a minute. What you're basically trying to tell us is the city administrator is running the city. Now that couldn't be true. That's a joke.
I'm telling you that she this is what she did. And then we have, I think it was during the summertime, there was a budget meeting and there was issues with Ms. Kippett, basically asking the questions about the comprehensive plan, how much it would cost. And then the newly hired city planner that we hired from the master plan group explained that, I think I can do it for about $50,000. And then they just put it off for a year. And their actions throughout the entire year hasn't been to do the work that was needed, what they were intended to be hired for. So everything just kind of got pushed to the wayside. There was issues with other opportunities, like for instance, just with the recent plats for the new development, any of that. It's, you could tell through the actions that they were underutilized. Like they just wanted to wait another year. Plus, I've had conversations with Fire Chief Simmons in regard to there was issues with there was lack of communication was mentioned to me that's he was like, I would have appreciated that the engineer or the planner would have talked to me more, which I found was really silly because there's no need for them to be contacting the city fire chief, because that's not part of protocol. Usually it goes through the city administrator, and the same thing goes with the city council as well. And I ended up talking to two of the members of city council. They were willing to talk to me about some of the concerns, and both of them also said mirror image information that there was communication problems. And I asked them, well, who told you that? Well, the city administrator told them that.
So the city administrator tells the city council, hey, they're not communicating. Both companies that serve many other cities that do this all the time, for some reason at the same time, both of them are not communicating, and so they get rid of them.
And let me just say too is that I've got off my butt and I've made phone calls, and these people know who I am, and I am confident in knowing that the city council has been told one thing, and there's a communication problems, but I don't believe that the city council has gone further than asking, okay, well, what kind of communication problems. They haven't done any of the actual legwork that's needed to, to confirm, like, is it the issues? Because even throughout the entire year, the city planner has been showing up and providing beautiful work, by the way, of whenever there was planning and zoning meetings, there was board, if there was a board adjustment meeting, even if they needed to have a discussion of what of the members of planning and zoning or board of adjustments, he explained to them. He showed up to meetings on time, and he presented very well, even at city council meetings. So they claim that the lack of communication is just not there.
Well, what I find interesting is in 2019, you guys had 8 engineering firms. You had 8. I have 4 up there, but when that was initially what you had told me. This was a few weeks ago, and I haven't changed that slide, but it was actually 8. We just saw that in the minutes. You culled it down to 4 on each. That was in 2019. The responsibility of the city council is to vet each of these proposals to ensure that the citizens are being served. But the problem is, I think, basically comes up when we take a little bit deeper look and take a look, for instance, at the March 24th, what we call, remember what you saw at the beginning of the show, the consent agenda, where the mayor basically put on this consent agenda the approval of the new city planner and the new city engineer, which is basically the same old city planner and city engineer that they had before. But what I find interesting, and this is something that you brought to my attention, Adrienne, is what was also in the packet. And what was also in the packet is this. This is an engineering report, and it's dated March 19th, 2020, and he wasn't even approved on the consent agenda until March 24th. And the other thing that you also said, hey, don't forget to take a look at this. You highlighted the fact that there's somebody CC'd on that little memo, even though that person is not the city planner. And even though the person writing it is not the city engineer, they somehow find a way to copy one another on this form. And ultimately, where this has ended up, or where we are today, is that we don't know. What we don't know is the biggest issue, because in 2020 we don't know what engineering firms or what city planners were reviewed. And the reason I can say that with absolute certainty is I submitted an open records request. Now, before we talk about that, before we do I talk about the open records request, which has been denied, by the way, and I'll talk about that. But I want to show you, the Iron Lady, at a city council meeting, and highlight what you had said. This is during citizen comments. This is, I think this was June 9th, just a few weeks. This is the last meeting, wasn't it? That you made these comments. Watch this.
This morning I went to the Rockwall County Commissioners meeting recognizing women veterans. Before the meeting, I observed Ms. Kippett asking a gentleman across the aisle, "What brings you to the Commissioner's Court?" Which he kindly replied back that he was a consultant for the county and that he was there to talk about some drainage issues.
Actual picture.
So Ms. Kippett said, "Oh, may I have your card?" And he responded, "Sure." And as he started to give his business cards out, Ms. Kippett continued, "I'm a council member in McLennan Chisholm," which he expressed his surprise and said that he already had a contract with McLennan Chisholm. Ms. Kippett steps towards him and he asked what her name is, and she said it was Lorna, and he mentioned his name is Deb Dufresne. City Council, you never interviewed qualified engineering candidates. None of them were here at a public meeting. Instead, you hired back Deb Dufresne and awarded a contract to him and his friend, the previous city planner, Mike Coker. It was done on a consent agenda on March 24th, 2020. Do the right thing, void the contracts, and interview qualified candidates.
Do you see the reaction of Nathan Hodges, Councilman Hodges, when he said, when you said, "Oh, hi, my name is Dub Dufresne," he sits there, and then all of a sudden his mouth gapes open. Oh my gosh! She doesn't even know the city engineer. Wait a minute. These people were supposed to have vetted these people, had presentations, and according to state law, according to the city council, they would have had to have done that, wouldn't they?
Yes, exactly. And there's and before anybody jumps on this about like, well, it's a possibility that that maybe she just mistook him for somebody else. No, look, Dub Dufresne and Mike Coker, they're a one-man shop. Okay, there is no confusing these gentlemen with like amongst an entire firm of people.
Yeah, and so, let me just say something about Mike Coker, the city planner. Mike Coker is a city planner that was on board when I got on city council. He had created the last comprehensive city plan that I was not happy with. And when I became mayor, I sat him down and I said, here is the thing. Here's the only standard that that concerns me is that you follow the ordinances of our city, that you do not make recommendations that violate it. And if you do want to do something like that, well, then we need to have a separate meeting where you come in and you make presentations or proposals and say, hey, I think this is a little bit too tight of an ordinance. Why don't you open this up a little bit? Well, he assured me, don't worry, I will never violate the city ordinances. Well, was that a lie. And when I say a lie, I mean a lie. He, a cell phone tower company, decided that they wanted to put a cell phone tower and violate the height standard of our city. That's a pretty simple thing for the city planner to say, unfortunately, it doesn't meet the height requirements of the city, so I recommend that you turn this down. That's not what he did. He said it doesn't meet the standards, but I recommend you approve it anyway. That is the impetus where which by the way, and this is key, he did not make this presentation to the city council. Why? Because at that time, the ordinance fell to the Board of Adjustment. That of all things, towers were the only thing that never went through planning and zoning or the city council. Think about that. And when we got wind of that, we said, whoa, why aren't they coming to planning and zoning? Why aren't they going to city council? And that's when our city planner highlighted, oh, well, that's the exception. They go to Board of Adjustment. So I attended the Board of Adjustment meeting. Adrienne, you attended the Board of Adjustment meeting as well. And I spoke out against it. And I said, listen, the city has no other alternative. We have no recourse. If you guys approve this tower, then the city has no other alternative but to file a lawsuit. And we don't want to do that. But this is an end around. By the way, when we figured out that you had to, that the towers could just do that end around, we eliminated that. We changed that ordinance as quickly as legally possible, and it passed unanimously. So now if a tower company comes into our city, they have to go through the planning and zoning, they have to go before council, and council can say no. Before, they couldn't do that. Now that ended us up in a lawsuit where we actually came out in a settlement much better off. I've now forgotten how much money the city made off of that tower company, but the tower company ended up having to pay the city of McLennan Chisholm, and a lot of people use that as me using the attorney fees were out of control. They weren't out of control. We were just upholding our city standard. That to say, this is why Mike Coker and why you guys, one of the reasons why you guys got rid of Mike Coker and Dub Dufresne, you got rid of him because you wanted to have a firm that had multiple employees that could do multiple things that weren't a one-trick pony. And if our city engineer got hit by a bus, well, we'd be kind of up a creek without a paddle. Am I right?
Well, that's true. And keep in mind, at that time, I was learning about the cell towers because at that time, depending on how involved you are as a city council member, you kind of keep up with what the latest information that's happening in Texas. And in that time, there was a huge lawsuits happening with a bunch of other smaller cities because the cell tower companies, they would hire these middleman groups to go and look for loopholes in smaller towns, and because they figured they can take advantage of them, and we just so happened to be one of them. And because they noticed that it went straight to Board of Adjustment, it didn't go to City Council.
That's right.
So yeah, and my only issue with that is that he should have been aware of that. He should have brought that step to the city.
Well, he should have denied it. He should have made a recommendation to deny, but he didn't. His recommendation was to approve. Mike Coker, I'm talking about. Yes, that's
true. But in addition to that, he should have also added to bring to our attention about some ordinance problems that needed to be updated, because we kind of did it on our own at that point. We started looking at ordinances at that time to okay, we seriously need to look at this, because if that's one loophole, what are the other things that are happening that, then we found out later that there was much that was outdated. And as, city council members, your job is to be to legislate and things of that nature. So that was something that we needed to spend time on. But yeah, and there's just other issues with Mr. Coker. And I can tell you that if anybody wants to look online right now, look at the city maps section on the City McLennan Chisholm website, and then you can compare that to the City of Heat's maps, and then the City of Rockwall and the City of Dallas. And I promise you, there's a huge difference in the type of mapping that's done. And at that time during the interview process, he absolutely was honest and said, I can't do the GSI mapping like the other companies could, but I'd be willing to learn on the job, so to speak.
Yes.
And I'm like, wait a minute, but this entire time, for about 2 years, the things that I keep on asking you for, you were giving me the impression that you could do. And then now, after hearing all these other gentlemen that are presenting, you're now telling us that you're going to learn on the job to do this?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Yeah. So, like I said, and then the issue with the comprehensive plan was a problem. I mean, we there's so many things that needs to be taken care of that I don't believe that he had all the tools and equipment. It's like saying, if you want to, you want to look at options on quality of cars based on the lifestyle you need, you want to make sure that, the car that you get can be able to meet your current lifestyle. And it's the same thing when it applies to the cities too. There might be somebody that may not have all the techniques or the experience or other projects to be able to do the work that is needed for a city that's growing and having a bunch of new people coming in to meet those needs. And so we may not understand or know what's available to us unless we take that opportunity to meet other engineers or planners to make us aware, here's the certain standard, and this is why we need to do it this way, because we have learned based on XYZ, it's best to do it this way to avoid these other problems, and again, they. Yeah,
but I think another important point is that he did the last comprehensive city plan. He's willing to do. He's going to do they're hiring him to do the next comprehensive city plan. And what you said was the former company was going to charge $50,000. Well, Coker is going to charge what, $35,000? Is that right?
It was less than that, but again, I mean,
it's competitive bidding is what that is. It's a pound. It's a penny wise and a pound foolish. It is the classic case of that, where we will get our money's worth. I guarantee that. And one of the things that I think stands out more than any is the fact that the former company, when they're going to do a comprehensive city plan, what they want to do is what that old thing that is criticized all the time is city surveys. Sure. They want to ask citizens, here, what do you want to see in your citizens through surveys? Well, Coker's not going to do that. He's going to have some meetings, some open meetings, and boy, don't we all have nothing better to do than go to a meeting? Rather than a city survey, which Coker can't do. He doesn't have the ability to do it. He doesn't know what he's doing. And so basically, this is more of the same. The reason I got in office in the first place is because this city council, the mayor and city council were driving our city toward a direction that they wanted, not what the people wanted. And that's
That's what we wanted to stop. That's why we started doing surveys of citizens and let the citizens tell us. What I wanted to highlight is the fact that I did open records request, a public information request, which I do all the time with the county, with the city, and I requested to see what the applicants, all of those who submitted proposals from the RFP, because they did a request for proposals just like they did in 2019, which is required by law. And what they got back is we don't know, because the city of McLennan Chisholm basically said, we're not going to give you that information. Then they sent this letter to the Attorney General's office saying the city has declined to release the information for the purpose of requesting an Attorney General's decision on which will permit the city to withhold information which involves third-person privacy, property interest, tax, and government code. And so they've got the Attorney General is supposed to take 45 days. It's been over 84 days since that was submitted. And so this is kind of where we find ourselves. And what's interesting is that the city council, what's interesting is that the city council has basically abandoned their fiduciary obligation to do the job of ensuring that the citizens are represented and that they are making sure that the right company is in place. The question is this. In 2019, Adrienne, you and Scott, you guys did all of these things openly and transparently. We can see which firms applied. The city is refusing to even release the information of what firms applied. That leaves us to question, well, how many firms did they apply for? And Adrienne, you and I seem to agree on this. We agree on a lot of things, but this thing we especially agree on, and that is that they interviewed basically one company. And we do know that the former company did apply, because apparently you talked to them, that they did apply, but we don't, but which is interesting, because that company, all of their proposal, everything that they did in 2019, that's public record. We can see all of that. But for some reason, all of a sudden, a year later, the city can't release that company's information for some strange reason. And here's what I think. So, Adrienne, you tell me what you think, and I'll let you have the last word. But I think that it's that there's some money exchanging hands. I think there's a little payola going on. That the Keith Short, the mayor of McLennan Chisholm, I assert, or what's the word? I allege that Mayor Keith Short is getting some money under the table. Why else would you have a consent agenda? The first time they've ever done a consent agenda, and the last time they've ever done a consent agenda. They've got a meeting tomorrow night. Guess what? What's not on there? A consent agenda. All of the reports. So that's my story. What's your story? What do you think is really going on?
I don't really think that's the situation with Keith. I don't think he's taking money underneath the table or anything like that. What I do believe is that the city administrator has extra work on her hands, and she's, the city council has been trusting that she's doing her job, and they're trusting her that she's doing everything that's expected of her, and they trust her opinion. And I believe that they just went along with what she told them. I don't believe that they had interviewed Mike Coker. I don't believe that they interviewed Dub Dufresne. Like I said, I mean, whenever I saw Kippett at the Rockwall County Commissioner's Court and that whole exchange, I mean, she literally did not know who that man was.
Exactly.
So I don't believe they interviewed anybody. I think they just went ahead and went along with, we'll just put this, this agreement in place. There was communication problems happening with the previous company. I just can't seem to, I don't have any other answer, but other than that there's communication problems. And so I need y'all to hear me out. I'm suggesting let's hire back the previous engineer and previous city planner, because again, she had shown actions in the past that indicated to me, as well as the other council members, that in 2019, that she didn't want to let those gentlemen go. And again, I mean, we can all be nice and friendly and all that. I get it, but at the end of the day, are they the best candidates for the city of McLennan-Chisholm? I don't think so. And anybody that lives in any development that has drainage issues, that has road problems, that has foundation problems, or there's sewer system, all that, you know, that should be concerning to you because of what you guys have experienced. And I can personally have my own issues too, but I'm not speaking about my personal issues with the outcomes that I've experienced as a homeowner. But overall, we should want the best candidate that can do the job. And so far, these gentlemen, I don't believe that they met, and I don't believe that the engineer has been utilized as needed based on what we had requested in the request for a proposal that we needed for the city.
Well, I think that, you know, that's all well and good, Adrienne. I agree with you on all of these points. The question is, what is motivating the city council, the mayor, to put these things on a consent agenda? What is motivating the city? And let's not forget that the mayor is the chief executive officer. He makes all of the decisions, right? That's what he reminds the council of all the time. He's the chief executive officer. What could possibly compel him to put this stuff on a consent agenda and then direct the staff? Because it's not the staff. I'm sorry. This, I think, is the one area that will probably disagree on, and we won't find consensus on. But that is that supposedly the city administrator runs the city. I think Keith Short runs the city from behind the scenes, behind closed doors. That's why you have so many behind closed door meetings. That's why so many decisions occur behind the scenes. I think Keith Short is corrupt as the day is long. And I think that he is finding a way to bring in vacation money somehow. And this is one of the best ways to do it. Where did he learn this? He learned this from former councils who basically sold the citizens up the river so that we could have developments that violate our city's 1.5 acre minimum per home site standards. How else do you get all of that? How does that happen? Is it just because they're trying to be benevolent to developers? Folks, I mean, Adrienne, I was born on a day, it just wasn't yesterday. And the bottom line is these people are corrupt.
He does get influence from other previous mayors and council members. I mean, I do believe that he does have conversations with them, like,
well, not only conversations, but remember, they bankrolled his campaign. They got him a consultant, an out of town consultant. They made sure that they basically played the political action committee that demonized me and made false allegations to get him in office. Why? Because they are his boy. He is their boy. And he's going to dance to their tune because there's a lot of money to be made. Folks, anyone who doesn't believe that this is not a money proposition is a fool. I used to believe that there were people who really genuinely cared. But I have learned, unfortunately, as far as when it comes to government, especially little governments like this, local municipalities, that there is a way around everything, and they are going to play that as far as they can. And as long as the district attorney continues to turn her eyes away from all of the corruption, who refuses to even entertain these issues or have the sheriff investigate them the way they investigated me, the way they investigated Wayne Orchard and you. I mean, the district attorney didn't have any problem investigating us when we violated the Texas Open Meetings Act, according to them, because we talked about things that were not on the agenda. Like, I don't know, the Dallas Cowboys football team. Well, that's not on the agenda. You're violating state law. You're violating the Texas Open Meetings Act. These people are corrupt. Adrienne, I love you to death. I trust you more than anything. You are the Iron Lady of McClendon Chisholm, but you're wrong here. I'm just telling you, you are wrong. It is all about money. It is a corrupt system, and Keith Short is the reason for it. I got to tell you, I am looking forward to November. We got to wait until November because Keith Short put on a consent agenda to move the election all the way from May to November so that he could stay in office a little bit longer and get a little bit more money in his back pocket while he's in office. But I'm looking forward to November because citizens are going to have a choice. Her name is Val Bodart, and she's a tough-minded individual. She happens to be a veteran, a U.S. Air Force veteran. She's quiet, I got to tell you, but she is tough as nails, and she's able to stand up to these developers and these yahoos, these former mayors, and just tell them, hey, listen, you don't run this city anymore. We do. The citizens are going to take this back. So hopefully Val Bodart will. I'll tell you what, if Daffy Duck were on the ballot against Mayor Short, people should be voting for Daffy Duck. Adrienne, thank you so much for being my guest. I love it when we can talk and disagree amicably. We're not going to be burning each other's houses down like some other groups, right? But no, seriously, I do appreciate everything you do and all of the work that you do. You do a lot of research for me, and you help immensely. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
All right, well, we will see you next time. And for those of you who are not subscribed, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell because that tells you when I go live or when I post something. And that's the best way for you to stay informed and get straight talk about what's going on in Rockwall County. I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen. This is the Bunker Bob Show. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.